recorded live at Town Hall here at Kymberli Measurements. This is AE2. So for most folks, walking into a room full of strangers and intentionally, with purpose, introducing yourself, by fear, that ranks right up with public speaking. Yet it's undeniable how valuable that skill is once you've developed it. Well, tonight's guest has made a calling out of helping people who struggle in those areas do exactly that. And in so doing, help their careers, their missions, and their calling as well. We look forward to introducing you to Kymberli. But first, before I introduce you to her, I'd like to share with you some of the things that are going on here at Hiller Measurements. Today's a big day. We've got our national sales meeting. My guys don't know it. But at lunch today, we've got it all set up that we're going to take the entire team. Instead of getting corporate shirts and things that look just like every other company, we're taking all the guys to Indochino, and everyone's going to get fitted for new suits. We're going to pick one cloth. All of us get suits in any cut or style, but we're all going to be cut from the same cloth. That's going to be the new face at Hiller this year when we're out in front of customers. It's going to be a great day. Welcome back. So I want to introduce you to a friend of mine, Kymberli Speight. And I've got this written down because there's so much, so bear with me. So Kymberli is an Air Force Academy grad and prior Air Force officer. Thank you for your service.
My pleasure.
She has a career that's been filled both in active and civilian life in human resources, recruiting, contract administration, and most recently in career coaching. And Kymberli has recently released her new book, I Need to Know You, which you can pick up on Amazon. Just came out. I've read it. It's fantastic. Kymberli, welcome to the AE Squared stage. It's great to have you. It's great to have you. So let's get started with a little bit before the book. Okay. So tell me the backstory that led up and inspired you to write this.
Well, Jeff, so you know that I work with senior military executives that are getting ready to transition out of the military and into the civilian world.
Okay.
And so I teach a 4-day workshop with them, helping them with that transition. And during that transition, I talk to them that course. I tell them how important it is for them to develop their network outside of the military. So that's really crucial because a lot of times your network is where your help is going to come from. So by the end of the course, when I first started teaching, I realized they were getting that concept that they really did need to network, but they were struggling with how do I actually go about doing that. Right. So I started teaching them a 2-hour block on practical steps to networking. So when I heard about a challenge to go out and meet 100 people in 100 days, that just really resonated with me because I thought, well, I'll be able to say to them, if I can meet 100 people in 100 days, then surely you can go out and meet 15 or 20. So that's really how my challenge started. It was really a way to have credibility, to be able to just not say from theory, this is what you do, but I've actually done it. If I can do it, you can do it.
So tell the story briefly, and I don't want to get into the book, but you start this out. This concept of meeting 100 people in 100 days. I would imagine right now a lot of our viewers at home, that gives them hives, right? The thought of intentionally meeting a new person a day, every day, 100 days. Why did you do that?
Well, because when your why is big enough, the facts really don't matter.
Okay, what was your why?
My why was to be able to help the students in my course because they've served our nation for 20 to 30 years. Right. And then they struggle to get connected. I mean, they're totally skilled, right? They've been doing product delivery for 20 or 30 years. So when in my course I tell them you're in charge of, you need to be the CEO of you. You're also in charge of marketing and business development. That business development piece is getting out there and letting people know what it is that you bring to the table. And so I guess the journey was also personal because my husband Joel, he served for 24 years, had degrees, had tons of leadership experience, but we just weren't armed with how do you go out there and take yourself to the marketplace. So it was very personal for me.
Right.
Because I know that they're skilled, I know that they're qualified, they have so much that they can bring to private industry, to so many people.
Right.
So for me, it was, I need to be able to help these people do it well, to understand how to talk about themselves, how to market themselves, how to get out there and become known outside of the military. Because when they're known in the military, but they've had 20 or 30 years to network, which is really about giving. They've had 20 or 30 years to do that. So now they have to be intentional about taking themselves out into the civilian world and letting people know what they can do.
So what a great service, first of all, to help our warfighters do that. That's fantastic. So let's go to the corner case for a second. Let's talk about the most introverted amongst us, right?
Okay.
Give us a teaser, a little bit of a sense of if somebody who is just that person I was talking to in the intro, right? Just the thought of public speaking or just being in a crowd with, how did they get started? What is that, the most introverted person, what should they do to just make that first introduction? What do you tell them?
Okay. First, what I tell them, I think knowledge is power. Mm-hmm. Introverts actually can have an easier time doing this than an extrovert. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm extrovert. I love to talk, so I have to rein myself in. Whereas an introvert, they tend to want to listen more. So really conversation can develop so much easier if you're introverted. So I think them knowing that, it takes away, first of all, it takes away the excuse, but it also, they are empowered to know I can do this, because if I can do it as an extrovert, they can do it as an introvert. And so the other thing I would say is, come prepared. If you have a couple of open-ended questions, which you're really great at, by the way, because I've seen some of your shows. If you have a couple of open-ended questions ready, top of mind, and maybe a value or two of yours, then you can have great conversations, because the other people will run with it, and you really don't have to say a whole lot.
So you would counsel some of these folks to kind of be prepared in terms of what is a generic open-ended question? You meet somebody that you could just get them to start talking?
Yes.
Is that the idea?
So yes, an open-ended question, but I like positive open-ended questions.
Right.
Because then the other person starts to feel good. Like if you say, tell me about, you could say, I'm getting ready to plan my vacation. What's your the vacation that you've enjoyed the most? And then they start thinking about that positive experience. That releases the hormones, serotonin and dopamine, which are the feel-good hormones. They start feeling good about that vacation. They feel good about you, and that opens up the conversation. They're going to go on and talk about that vacation.
So we shouldn't talk about politics.
I probably wouldn't start with that.
Yeah. So I loved reading through the vignettes. I guess I call them vignettes of the 100 people that you met. I actually know a couple of them.
Yes,
That was fun as well. But it's amazing to me in how short a period of time I imagine that engagement, how much you learned about them. And I have to imagine purposely meeting 100 people in 100 days, that had a personal impact on you. So I was wondering if you could share a little bit about maybe some of your favorite or most poignant memories and how that experience made a change in Kymberli.
So there were so many stories that were just powerful. I mean, I think everybody's story was, because everybody's story is valuable. That's really what I took away from this whole challenge. Everybody's story is valuable. But I think if I were to kind of narrow down in terms of what really impacted me, I could probably put it into two groups. The conversations that I had where I was challenged to think about, why do I think differently? Do I have a different viewpoint? And why is that? And is that still valid? And then folks that were challenged me with, why not? Because at some point in time in our lives, I think when we're younger, we think, oh, I can do this, why not do it? And then some point in time, you start to get a lot more conservative.
Yes.
So that whole thought of, well, why not, came back up. So I would think that the one group of stories would be those that really challenged my thought process.
Right.
And then the other group of stories were the stories that when I would talk to someone at the end of the story, they would say, thank you so much for asking me about my story. The first time I got that, I mean, I was just like, oh my gosh, right?
Emotionally affected, yeah.
Yes, because I realized that it was such a gift that they were giving me. It was a privilege for me to be able to sit there and hear their story. They were sharing something personal with me.
Right.
And then I got that over and over and over again. I thought, oh my gosh, this is powerful because people want to be known.
Yes.
And if somebody had gone through a hard time in their life, just to be able to share that, I was like walking alongside them just by listening.
Right.
So I think those are the things that I took away.
You don't have to fix them.
No,
You just have to hear them.
just be available.
So that first group, let's get back to that first group. People that challenge your worldview. How did you handle, most folks, especially in today's environment, don't communicate with somebody with the opposing worldview. And when they do, it goes to an argument of a division quickly. Did you feel that well up? And how did you govern that?
I didn't feel that well, I'll be honest, because my intent was to hear their story.
Yeah.
So I didn't go in with preconceived ideas. And if their viewpoint was different than mine, then I was curious to understand why.
Right.
So I went with a true intention of, let me see where you're coming from if your viewpoint is different than mine. And what I found was, after I had that conversation with them and they shared, I didn't necessarily have to agree with them, but then they wanted to know what I thought. So I was able to really have conversations around politics, around religion, around other things, and it wasn't confrontational, because by then they knew that I was interested in them and their story and their perspective, and then they honored me by listening to mine. So
There's something very profound in that experience that I think our country, especially at this time, really could learn from.
I hope we run with that.
I hope so too. So next, I want to talk to you though on the opposite side.
Okay.
Some of the more annoying conversations that we experience and how we apply what you've been teaching, and similar as some other authors as well that you very much remind me of. I'd like to talk a little bit more about that with you, all right?
Okay.
Okay. But first, I want to share with you some other good news that's going on at Hiller. 5G is coming. More data, more connected things, and capabilities we haven't yet fathomed. But already government and universities, base station, handset, and IoT companies, they have all gone to Hiller Measurements for inspired design in research, development, and production test. Why don't you? Good to have you back. Okay, so I'm going to recite this because as I was reading your book, there was a quote that you cited at the beginning of chapter 12 that I just wanted to get pom-poms on and cheer.
Okay.
Okay? And you quoted Dale Carnegie, how do you ever say it? And he said, "You can make more friends in 2 months by becoming interested in other people than you can in 2 years by trying to get other people interested in you." You just, the story you just told, you live that,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
This is why your book is so needed, because most don't. I know that professionally, being in the field with people who are engineers and clients and salespeople, that there is this natural tendency to want to develop a relationship by trying to tell everyone they meet about themselves, and let me tell you another story. And it's always projecting, and then the flip side is, you can see this especially with a lot of professionals where one person is talking and you look at the person who is listening, and you can tell that in their head they're not listening, they're thinking about what they're going to say next. Follow me?
Yes.
Yeah. So a few years ago, I had the chance to read a fabulous book that you remind me of by a PhD named Deborah Tannen called "You Don't Understand: Women and Men in Conversation." And what you've done with this book is actually tie a ribbon around her stuff. So I encourage our readers, make sure you get Kim's book, but also you might check Deborah Tannen, because I'll tell you that's a 1-2 punch. So here's a question I want to talk to you about. The negative conversation that I was telling you about, I call that show up and throw up.
Okay.
Right? Meet somebody and then just throw up on them with anything you want to do. And it's about making every discussion about themselves rather than listening and drawing out from other people. I have to imagine in your practice that you see that, because I see it everywhere. How do you help people recognize that behavior in themselves? And are there good skills to help them ask more and tell less?
Well, I think a lot of times if somebody is talking about themselves a lot, all the time, then it's coming from a need that's unmet that they have. So if we think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs,
Yeah.
you have the bottom layers, which are the physical needs, and then the safety needs. Then you have love and belonging, and then you have esteem, and then self-actualization at the top.
Okay.
So it's really, I think, those middle layers, the love and belonging, and the esteem that they're trying to get.
Right.
So knowing that, it helps me because I know where they're coming from and that's a need that's not being met. So then I would say it depends on how you handle that situation in terms of what's your relationship with that person.
Right.
So is your relationship a professional relationship or is it a personal relationship? And if it's a professional relationship, are you the subordinate, are you the peer, or are you the boss? Because then you're going to handle that differently, right? So if you're the subordinate, then you may just have to listen to that other person talk about themselves all the time.
Right.
Right? But you do have a choice because you don't have to stay there. You could always go look someplace else
That's
and go
true.
work somewhere else. Okay. So if you're a peer and you realize where that's coming from, a peer, like a coworker, somebody at the same level, then you know that that's a need that they have. So then you can help them by showing them, listening to their story and showing them acceptance, approval, and appreciation.
Right.
So that will help them, right? And so that's one thing you can do. You can help them by being willing to listen. Now, if it's going on week after week after week, month after month, then you have earned the right to then challenge them on it,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So you could just say,
It's a delicate discussion, though.
right, well, you can do it very gently and very kindly
Right.
because you could say, I noticed that you seem to have a need to be the center of attention or talk about things that you've done a lot. Can you explain to me why that is?
Right.
So, but you've earned that right now because you've been listening to their story for maybe weeks, maybe months. So you've earned that right to do that. Now, if you're the boss, then it depends also. Is this the way the person's talking about themselves all the time? Is it impacting business? Is it impacting their job? If it is, then you might need to bring them in for a counseling session.
Yeah.
You might want to hire a coach, depending. You might assign them a mentor or just lead by example. Because sometimes I have a friend, and he said he spent a lot of time with his boss, and he noticed that his boss was comfortable with silence.
Right.
And just by over time realizing that his boss was comfortable with silence, he was like, oh, maybe I should employ that as well. But the boss being comfortable with silence also gave that person a chance to be able to share what he needed to share. So there's different ways you can handle that. If it's in a personal setting, then again, you can choose to help your friend by listening, giving them acceptance, approval, and appreciation by listening to their story. Or you can choose not to engage.
Right.
So you can, when you're having a conversation or they're talking about themselves a lot, you don't have to respond. And then you excuse yourself. And if you do that enough, they'll start to realize, oh, I need to maybe open it up for let them speak some.
Yeah.
So,
Isn't it? It's funny because when you talk about Maslow's as far as that behavior emanates from a need in their life, but by your story and what you've shared so far, the interesting thing is the best way it would seem to have those needs filled in these discussions isn't about what you tell the person, it's the quality of the questions you ask and the intent by which you listen.
yes.
Right? You talk about that in
Yes.
your strategy at the front of the book about how you're planting seeds but it's actively listening and asking follow-up questions. It's not, let me tell you about myself.
Right.
That it comes back in ways that fill that Maslow's requirement,
does.
you know?
It does.
It's opposite of what you would behaviorally imagine it to be. Most of the time, I need more love. I'm going to go tell people how loving I should, how great of a person I am. And that, you get the opposite result.
Right. And what helps though is if they're making a statement or they're talking about themselves, if when you're listening, if you would make a statement based on something they said versus asking a question, you are affirming them that you heard them. You heard what
Right.
they said. And then that allows for the conversation to go organically versus if you are asking a question and then you're thinking about your next question, that kills the conversation.
Right. That's fantastic. So I think there's something there that's almost axiomatic, right? To help that person that's always talking about themselves.
Right.
You just pointed at it, which is ask a question, and then before you say anything about yourself, you have to at least ask one more follow-up question. Dig one layer deeper. Tell me more about that. Why is that?
Right.
I love that about you. It blows me away on these 100 interactions. Kim talked to him for 10 minutes and she wrote 2 pages about their life. It's how many people can do that? And yet everyone can.
Yes, yes. You've got it. Everyone can.
Everyone can.
If I can do it, anybody can do it.
Right.
It's a matter of listening and wanting to connect. And I loved it when you were talking about, that being intentional about the connection. So I think in business, if you're really intent on what the other person is saying, that'll help you in terms of, getting the concepts or whatever you need to talk business-wise. But in personal conversations, I would say listen to connect.
Right.
The difference is you go from a head connection to a heart connection.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're able, when you're listening to connect, you're trying to figure out, what does this person need? How can I help them? And sometimes just listening to their story, just honoring what they're saying is awesome.
It's funny. One of my favorite in business, and I don't mean to make this cheap, but that teaches in sales, is a gentleman named Mike Bosworth that we hope to have on the show sometime soon. And he teaches this whole thing about open-ended questions, closed-ended questions, and before you change the topic, you got to stop and confirm and say, okay, so did I hear you right? What you just told me was tick, 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 right? And in that stop and confirm part of the conversation is so valuable.
That's
right? It's communicating, I'm hearing you. I'm not manipulating you. I'm intently hearing you. That is such a beautiful thing. I'm so glad you've written this book to really amplify that. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
So did you write this is for the military in your practice that are in transition. But sincerely reading this book, I don't know what the boundaries are. Well, this is a good thing for business relationships. Heck, I look at that as that's marriage counseling, what you've written about. Can you speak a little bit to, how what your experience there has, whether in your walk of faith, in your marriage, in other relationships, are there things that you would do here that you wouldn't do in those other arenas?
No, this is basic. It's fundamental. It's 101. So while I wrote it initially with the intention to help the military make that transition, it is really for everybody.
Right.
It goes across. My hope is that it would help people have better community within their community and across communities.
Right.
Because it's just trying to find out about the other person, and it's fundamental. And so it helps in business because people do business with people they know, like, and trust.
Right.
But you got to become known.
Yep.
And a great way to be liked is to be interested in the other person.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's fantastic. So people can find this book on Amazon, right?
Yes.
It's now available?
It's available on Amazon and any major retailer, they can order it.
Okay, and we're going to put up at the end of the show how people can get in contact with you because you, tell us a little bit, you're on the speaking circuit. How can people get to know you a little bit better?
Well, the
professionally?
First way, the first way, of course, is get the book.
Yeah, go ahead, right, get the book.
But then they can connect with me on my website, KymberliSpeight.com.
Mm-hmm.
Kymberli, my name is spelled different, but they can connect with me there. And if they want to bring me in to speak to their organization, conduct a workshop, or if they want one-on-one coaching, they can connect with me that way.
Fantastic. Kymberli, it is such a blessing to have you. The service that you are doing is profound, and I'm so thankful to be able to tell your story here on AE Squared.
Thank you.
It's great to have you.
Appreciate it.
AE Squared is a Hiller Measurements Town Hall production. Copyright 2020. AE Squared is produced by Anthony Longoria. Production support by Crystian Zamora. The email address, if you'd like to attend a future taping, is tickets@hillermej.com. Hey, thanks for checking out today's episode. Make sure you subscribe, ring the bell, give us a thumbs up and all that good stuff, because next time we bring Don Reinertson to AE Squared. If you haven't heard of Don and you're in the product development business, you need to know Don. Don is the author of Flow, which is all about second-generation lean product development. fantastic guy, intellectually astute, and has exactly the message everyone needs to hear if you're in the business of designing things. Check us out, and we'll see you next time right here on Artists, Engineers, and Entrepreneurs.